I've always loved traveling, but I'm not exactly rolling in cash, so staying in Airbnbs was a great option for me. They're cheaper, more personal than hotels, and you often get to stay in unique places. I used to think they were the perfect solution until my last trip. What happened during my stay still haunts me, and it's why I'll never stay in an Airbnb again. It was late October, and I wanted to get away for a weekend to clear my head. Work had been stressful, and I needed a break. I found a cozy little cabin on Airbnb, tucked away in the woods of a small town a few hours' drive from home. The photos looked amazing, rustic, but with modern amenities. A fireplace and a deck overlooking a lake. It seemed like the perfect place to unwind. The host, Deborah, everyone raved about how welcoming she was, how the cabin was spotless, and how it was even better in person. I booked it without a second thought. When I arrived, it was already getting dark. The drive through the woods was longer and more isolated than I'd anticipated. My GPS kept losing signal, and the trees seemed to close in the further I drove. By the time I finally pulled up to the cabin, it was pitch black outside, except for the light coming from the porch. Deborah had left a note on the door welcoming me and given me instructions for using the fireplace, the Wi-Fi password, and where to find extra blankets. The inside of the cabin was just as charming as the photos, but there was something off about the place that I couldn't quite put my finger on. The air felt heavy, like the house was holding its breath. I shrugged it off as just being tired from the drive. I made myself a quick dinner, lit a fire, and settled in with a book. The quiet was nice at first, but as the night wore on, the silence became oppressive. The only sounds were the crackling of the fire and the occasional creak of the wooden beams as the cabin settled. Around midnight, I decided to go to bed. That's when things started getting strange. I had just crawled under the blankets when I heard a noise outside, a faint rustling, like something moving through the leaves. I froze, listening intently. The rustling grew louder, closer. My first thought was that it was just an animal, maybe a deer or a raccoon, but then I heard footsteps, slow and deliberate, circling the cabin. I got up and went to the window, trying to peer through the darkness. I couldn't see anything out there, just the vague outline of trees. The footsteps stopped. I waited, holding my breath, but the night had gone silent again. Telling myself it was just my imagination, I went back to bed and eventually fell asleep. I woke up around AM to the sound of the front door creaking open. My heart nearly stopped. I knew I had locked it, I was sure of it. I lay there, paralyzed with fear, listening as the door slowly, painfully, creaked open all the way. Then, nothing, just the sound of my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. I forced myself to get up and check. I grabbed my phone and tiptoed to the living room. The door was wide open. Swinging slightly in the breeze, I shone my phone's flashlight outside, but there was no one there. Just the empty darkness of the woods staring back at me. I slammed the door shut and locked it again, double-checking the deadbolt. I was too scared to go back to sleep, so I sat in the living room, huddled under a blanket with the fireplace poker in one hand and my phone in the other. As I sat there, trying to calm down, I noticed something on the coffee table that I hadn't seen before, a small, leather-bound journal. It wasn't there when I arrived. I was sure of that too. Curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. The journal was filled with short, frantic entries, all written by different people. Each one described their stay at the cabin and how they'd experienced strange occurrences, footsteps outside, doors opening on their own, whispers in the night, but the last entry made my blood run cold. It was written just a few days before I arrived. I don't think I'm alone here. Last night, I heard someone walking around outside. When I checked, the door was open, but no one was there. I'm leaving first thing in the morning. Something is wrong with this place. Don't stay here. The next few hours were a blur of fear. I kept hearing things, scratches at the windows, more footsteps, and once, what sounded like a low whisper coming from the kitchen. By the time the sun finally started to rise, I had already packed my bags and was ready to leave. I didn't bother cleaning up or leaving a note. I just grabbed my keys and bolted for the car. As I sped down the dirt road, I glanced in the rearview mirror, half expecting to see someone or something following me, but there was nothing. When I got home, I immediately reported the incident to Airbnb and wrote a detailed review warning others. A few days later, I received a response from Airbnb saying they'd looked into it but found no evidence of foul play. The listing was still active. I haven't used Airbnb since, and I never will again. There's something wrong with that cabin, something dark and malevolent. It's not just the place that's haunted, it's the whole experience. If you ever find yourself scrolling through Airbnb and see a cozy little cabin in the woods with great reviews, think twice. It might just be the same one, waiting for its next guest. I'll never forget the feeling of dread that settled over me that night. the silence, the footsteps, the door creaking open on its own, those things still haunt me. And that journal, I can't stop thinking about the others who stayed there before me, and the others who might stay there after. If you're reading this, take my advice, don't go looking for peace and quiet in an isolated cabin. You might just find something else entirely, and whatever you do, stay away from Airbnb. You never know what's lurking in the places you think are safe.